Let's face it, cyber attackers have the advantage. Extra Hop is on a mission to help you take it back. Regain the upper hand with security that can't be undermined, outsmarted, or compromised. When you don't have to choose between protecting your business and moving it forward, that's security uncompromised. See how it works in the full product demo, free online at securityweekly.com/extra hop. We're proud to announce CISO Stories, a new podcast series in partnership with Cybersecurity Collaborative and Cyber Reason. CISO Stories features the candid perspectives and experiences of frontline senior security executives and dives deep into timely security topics. CISO Stories is hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, VP of Cybersecurity Strategy at Cybersecurity Collaborative, and Sam Curry, Chief Product and Security Officer at Cyber Reason. Listen weekly as they speak with extraordinary CISOs by visiting securityweekly.com/CSP. People require access from anywhere to resources everywhere, but legacy security is ill-equipped for today's hybrid organization. Appgate SDP delivers zero-trust network access for hybrid workforces and workloads, empowering trusted users with secure, frictionless connections to only what they need. Make your attack surface invisible and reduce time to provision by 91% with Appgate SDP, a leader in the 2021 Forrester ZTNA New Wave. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Appgate.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Ben Carr. Security Weekly Unlocked will be held in person this December 5th through 7th at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista. We are excited to announce our first round of speakers, and I think we have the full agenda up live now on the site. Visit securityweekly.com/unlocked to register and check out our rockstar lineup. Cyber Risk Alliance, in partnership with InfraGard, has launched the Critical Infrastructure Resilience Benchmark Study. Measure your readiness for ransomware by completing the survey and getting your score. Visit securityweekly.com/CIRB to take the survey. All right, gentlemen, our first article of the day. It's such a good lead-in after the last segment with Guillaume. Who owns security? The CISO or the CIO? And it's funny because I don't think they have a CIO.
I don't think so either. Not that I heard, right? It's, I mean, we touched upon this a little bit last week, right? And how, the CIO kind of has their lane and CISOs have their lane. And, there's a mutual ownership, I guess, on both sides. But, the part of this article that I found very interesting was the future of the CISO and CIO roles. And, I'm going to be honest with you. I've said this from way in the beginning, and it actually happened to me, and I will still say it. I think CISOs are positioned to take on the CIO role. I really do. I think that they're well positioned to become the CIO and really take over. I like that first model. The only other side that I've seen in action is, a good friend of mine, John Frederickson. He became Chief Risk Officer from CISO. So those are really the two avenues that I'm seeing for that future of the CISO role.
Yeah, I think especially as you look at what the CIO does. I mean, I hate to say legacy, but it's an infrastructure role, right? Typically, yeah. And it's not the first cloud company that I've seen where they actually have a CISO, but they don't have a CIO, right? And that's just, I think, because of what the tool set and the skill set are. And as Jason mentioned, I'm seeing that too. I've seen one or two companies where I've seen the CISO actually have the CIO report up underneath of them. But Matt, you and I have talked about this for a long time. Like, I definitely think that security is its own pillar, and it shouldn't be under the CIO. There's just too much conflict there.
Yeah, I think the paragraph that really stuck out to me is that a handful of organizations, the CISOs report to the Chief Risk Officer, the Chief Financial Officer, or General Counsel. And when you think about a highly regulated environment like fintech or healthcare or something like that, those would be logical places. And to your point, the ability then for the CISO to move into the Chief Risk Officer role. Yep. I don't think the CISO really wants to be the CFO because I do enough bean counting myself that's probably not what people want to do.
I don't like doing my own budgets, never mind the entire company.
Right, exactly right. So, yeah, definitely those seem to be the transition paths.
For sure.
Next article, the CISO working with how do you achieve better relationships with the C-suite? I mean, this is one we talk about as well, because this is a business enablement role now. This means you are working with your peers at the executive level, right? And there's some interesting, kind of guidelines around language with this, working with the CFO, which we just talked about. That's potentially your boss in some organizations. Some interesting guidance here.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Ben.
No, I was just going to say that, the sentence that struck out to me is like really important was, the only way the CISO can do their job is to have the full support of the CEO.
Oh my God, you're reading my mind, brother. That's what I was just going to say.
That's nothing truer has ever been spoken, right? You can't be an effective CISO if you don't have the support. And as I see it, it's kind of, the CEO should want that, just like he leans on the CFO or legal for their responsibilities. I mean, in today's world with the risk that we're seeing, it's a pillar, and the CEO's got to have a partnership and rely on that CISO, and you got to have that relationship.
Yeah. In my mind, it's table stakes, right? I put that comment in my notes, and underneath it, I put budget, resources, empowerment, and authority. Action, not words. Like those were my notes, because again, you can be put in a position where the CEO says he supports you, but his actions don't, and you're getting undermined, right? And that's not a good situation to be in. It's the action that matters. When a CEO says they support you, that means they're side by side working with you on those decisions, right? So, those are the pieces of the puzzle that matter. Budget, resources, empowerment, authority, action.
Right. CEO relationship, CFO relationship, because that's where the budget's going to come from. And it brings up this whole discussion again about the CISO and the CIO and their relationship, because again, for a lot of organizations, that's still a very important relationship that has to be, managed as well. Yeah. All right.
Agree.
Article number 3. Where am I? Oh, this is around working with the chief privacy officer. Now, again, Guillaume was pretty forthright, and these are things they thought about from day one. Like they hired people around regulatory, and they're thinking about privacy very early on, because again, highly regulated environment. This is a discussion about how the CISO should be working with the chief privacy officer. And Ben, I'm a little curious from your thoughts on this, because knowing the history of Qualys and some of the things we've had to do in previous around privacy and things in other countries, I mean, this is a really interesting topic.
Yeah, well, I think you're alluding back to when I was at Nokia, right? And certainly there was a big issue around privacy. In fact, kind of started the privacy program there from an information security perspective. And so how you deal with privacy is critically important, and it's risen in the last several years. I mean, when you think of the CISO role or the CSO, what's your role? Who do you align with? I mean, it's even worse for the chief privacy officer, right? That's even a newer C-level role in many cases. And so I think CISOs are trying to deal with, a lot of cases, they don't want to deal with the privacy issues, or not they want to deal with them, but it's just, they're not up to speed. It's that interesting blend of security and legal in a lot of cases. And so, if you're focusing in an enterprise on security, sometimes privacy is an area where it makes sense to have somebody else doing it. But then the question is, where does the CPO report? Does he report to legal? Does he report to the CISO? How do you partner? So I think this article was really kind of interesting and, raising that. I haven't seen a lot of people raise that issue of how does that alignment work?
And I think, Ben, a lot has to do with the amount of overhead too, right? I was the de facto privacy officer as the CSO, just because there wasn't someone, and we didn't have a lot of regulatory issues.
Yeah, like you said, what's the workload?
That's it, right? So I could handle
in an organization that's highly regulated, or a lot of GDPR, like there's a lot of privacy issues. Like you're going to have that. That's going to have to be an independent role, because it's just the demands. But you're right. There are many organizations where it's a surface area risk, right? And so that may fall under security, or may just fall under
exactly. But I will say, to your point, I had one hell of a relationship with general counsel, right? I mean,
you have to.
That was the key. Had to have them on speed dial.
And there's been this argument, and this was an argument that was made a few years ago, that you can't have security and privacy play together. Like there's certain things you needed to have access to be secure. I think those arguments are gone now, aren't they?
Yeah, I personally do. I mean, I was successful in it. Again, didn't have a lot of overhead. I'm sure with a ton of a ton of regulatory work, we would have hired someone, just because you need to have someone focused on it. And, with all the work that I had, there's no way I could have focused on privacy or regulatory governance as the chief security officer. So we would have had to hire somebody. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's a church and state kind of thing going on that we have to worry about.
No, I don't think so. I think it does depend somewhat on where you sit in the org, right? Like what your mandate is. And so if you're a chief security officer versus a chief information security officer, then one of your pillars might be having privacy, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas if in a legacy kind of structure where you're mainly responsible for a down level role of just information security or under the CIO, you may not have the ability to handle privacy, right, in the mandate that you have. And so I think that's really kind of important as you figure out how many reports does the CEO have, right? I mean, that's been one of the challenges I know from a lot of organizations I've talked to, is that, we want the CISO reporting to the CEO. Does he really understand enough? And I think ultimately, if you bring security up, but then make some of the other functional areas kind of under the CISO, then I think it starts to address that capacity and load issue.
Yeah, and Ben, you bring up such an awesome point, because I dealt with this, right? For the folks listening, CEOs actually care about their reporting structure and how many people report up to them. When I took on the chief security officer role, one of the debates was, I don't know if I want another executive reporting up to me. I already have X amount of executives, right? Like, that's something they think about, is actually the amount of people they have to manage. And
it's funny because it's a sign of mature leadership, like how many people you have actually reporting to you, like the scale issue. I think there's an old kind of meme about this, about, the number of people you have reporting to you is based upon how many, how many pieces of pizza, you can eat off of 2 pizzas. And, more people who want to build this large organization and have a ton of people reporting to them, I think they're not really exposed or experienced with what the demands of leadership are in running an org. And so I think there is a max capacity, but how you scale your team and how you scale in someone else's team.
Yeah. And to the CEO's credit, once we had the conversation about the risk to the organization, the business benefits we would bring to the table, the pressure we were receiving from our customers, at the end of the day, he said, you want to know what? We got to do it anyway. We have to get it done. So he made that decision. I think
we've talked about it a bunch of times. It's like being seen as a business leader, right? If they see you as a tech leader, you're down level. If they see you as a business leader, then it's part of the discussion.
You got it.
Exactly right. Yeah, you got to provide business value at that level. Otherwise, being on the executive team it's not worth it. Not at least for the CEO. Yeah, exactly right. Next article, a day in the life of. I'm curious how closely this matches your daily schedule, gentlemen.
I did not see a lot of alignment here. It was a good shot at it, but I don't think it necessarily trended. It was kind of a stab in the dark, it seemed.
Well, the first one is, does anybody drive to the office anymore?
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you are driving the office, not at 8 a.m., like you're leaving before that to make it there before everybody.
Yeah, I mean, again, this didn't resonate too much with me. I mean, it's one person's view of how they run their day. It doesn't align with how I run my day at the end of the day. And ultimately, I know how I work. I know when I'm most efficient, and I map out my days accordingly. I think this is more of a way an executive works, right? I mean, everybody's different. We're our own fingerprint.
Oh, of course. I just thought it was interesting. Outside of the fact that nobody's driving into an office, the first thing he does when he gets there, is he logs into a security dashboard and he looks at all these metrics. I'm like, really? Do you? I mean, I would be. You probably got a bajillion emails from the CEO or the CFO about some other business-related discussion. I don't know that you're checking all this stuff.
Nope.
Yeah, there was no dig out of the 150 emails you got in the last hour between when you walked away from your desk.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, agreed. This next is I love these HBR articles, right? They do such a good job from a communication perspective, and I thought this was such an interesting concept. How to say no after saying yes, and I think about the security being the department of no, and this is the opportunity for the security department to say yes, but then figure out how to say no.
I mean, it happens all the time. You know, you get into a business meeting and you're having conversations with stakeholders and colleagues, and you're formulating strategies, and you say, "Yep, all right, well, we can get this done. We can get this done." Then you go back to the team and you talk about the nuances. You're like, "Oh, crap." Right? Something I didn't think of, something that's a roadblock. But for me, ultimately, it's really taking a deep dive into, can I get them to the outcome, but maybe in a different way, right? And I think part of this was offer an alternative, right? Mm-hmm. So I've always taken the stance of, all right, is there another way to get them to the outcome? Because ultimately they want an outcome. Maybe it's not gonna be the way they thought, or we're not gonna take the same road that they thought. But let's see if we can figure out a way to get them to the outcome that they're looking to achieve.
Yeah, and I think getting them to the outcome in a very truthful, open, honest way that preserves your relationship are those other couple points of nuance in this article, is because, look, at the end of the day, if you're in a leadership position, you've also got to preserve your relationships with the rest of the executive team, right?
Yep. But I think that's the piece they'll appreciate. If you come to the table and you're honest, you say, listen, I didn't think of X, Y, Z. I went back, I talked to the team. Here's how things are really built, or here's the information that I have now, and really say, really go at it from the point of, how can we get you to this outcome?
Yeah, and I think, like, ultimately at the end of the day, like, think before you speak, right? It's important, right? Try to figure out, like, what are the nuances that you may not have captured, and how do you go back and kind of take some time to assess, right? It's often better to go back and say, hey, let us think about how we can best respond to that. I think we might be able to meet your goals, but those hard commits, right, put you in a weird spot where you have to sometimes walk them back. And I turn it around too. And, sometimes how do you say yes after you said no? Okay. But how do you say no after you've said yes, right? It works both ways, right? You've got to be able to go back to the table sometimes where you said you couldn't do something and you realize it's more important for the business or for the relationship to figure out a way around it. And as you said, Jason, I think it's about creating that alignment, with the other execs, and those relationships are super important. So how do you maintain them?
That's it. And at some point, one of the executives is going to do the same thing to you. It happens, right? So if something like that happens with another executive, be patient.
Happens, be graceful, be patient, take the time.
You got it.
Especially during budgeting season.
When everybody's hair's on fire.
Yep. I'm just saying. Yes. We've covered these different cybersecurity priorities for 2021. I don't think there's anything of a surprise in this list. But number one, I think is so critical. It's just the getting back to the fundamentals. I still believe sometimes we've just lost sight of the basics because we're running so fast. We're thinking about way out there, and we're just not doing some of the basic fundamentals. Now, I think Guillaume had a very interesting perspective on this. Like, I didn't need to do asset management when I walked in the door, right? Because to me, that's one of those cybersecurity fundamentals, like know what you have, Jason, to your point. He didn't have to worry about that, so he could skip that step and kind of build it into his overall program. But it's these fundamental things that are going to get us burnt sooner than all this advanced, crazy zero trust architectures and all the other things.
It's always something simple, right?
It's the say easy, do hard, though, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I hope Guillaume is at least documenting what he has and what he's built, right? That's the key, because 10 years from now, if there's no documentation and there's nothing to go back on, he's going to be in the same boat that we were in our organization. So, even if it's greenfield, you got to be building those best practices and processes and documentation and doing the things that you should be doing. But it's say easy, do hard. I mean, patching, we would always think, patching, it's patching. Well, I mean, the last environment I was in, we had systems that could only be patched in certain timeframes at certain times. And you know what I mean? And it's just, it's getting the elbow grease in there and just figuring out what you need to do so you don't stop the business, but you can get these things accomplished. And it's not easy. I mean, I remember my team just to create patching schedules for all the assets we had. We spent months doing that to make sure we wouldn't cripple
Jason,
the business.
Where do you think the balance is between what you're saying, which I definitely agree with, the say easy, do hard things, but there's also that balance of it's not fun, it's not cool, it's not sexy, it's not new.
Oh, totally,
right?
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Chasing the new thing, and that's what people want to do. And
100%.
Sometimes is it just what gravitates to personalities? Is it, how do I get new budget? How do I build a larger fiefdom? Like, where's the balance on that? Where do you think it lies? Is it 50-50? Is it what one to the other? Where do you think?
I mean, this would be a total gut guess.
Yeah.
Maybe 50-50, because it's one of those things where you say, shit, this is kind of hard, so I'm just going to forget about it. I'm going to go look at the shiny thing. You know what I mean? I'm going to go get a tool.
It just always kills me in cyber, right? It's like there's always, even from the vendor space, there's always something new, right? There's always something to fix the problem where just patch.
Right? That's it, right? But everybody likes the new shiny cool tools.
Right.
But if the foundation is crumbling, it's going to tumble, and that's the issue. And
I think
it sucks, believe me. It sucked. It sucked to be a chief security officer who had to sit with the IT team and sit with the operational team and sit with the security team and be like, we don't have a patching cycle. All right, let's figure this shit out. Right? And it's like, let's just go.
On this list, develop robust continuity plans. Like DR and BCP
right.
and that's just like, let's not worry about that. We'll get to that when that's important.
Right.
When it's
and you know what they forgot in the article, Ben? You know what they forgot, Ben? Test the freaking things.
Yeah, test your plan.
First have a plan, then test the plan. But
test.
Right, but I mean, this is the thing that you guys pointed out, right? We chase the shiny thing, zero trust or XDR or whatever the latest buzz term is. AI and ML was before this, right? Yeah. We're chasing the shiny stuff, but if we're not doing the basics and the fundamentals, and we're not, how do you do those effectively?
I argue this too. Break apart what zero trust is and tell me there's not a shit ton of fundamentals in there. Break apart what SASE has become, right? Tell me there wasn't a bunch of fundamentals that needed to happen. Yeah, I get it. It's cloud native. Okay, got it. But other than that, it's a bunch of fundamentals that we've been talking about for years.
Yeah, for sure. We can't seem to just complete the task, right? Finish what you started.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because a new term comes out, we're like, look, squirrel.
Yeah. It's so true.
This last article I thought was interesting, just to pull in for some resources for folks, right, around business interruption insurance. I mean, with the rise of ransomware, where does this play? And he points out in here, you got to look at the different plans. You don't just buy business interruption insurance. It's part of a different insurance strategy. It's typically part of, your base policies. They could be
plus the riders
integrated in. Yeah, they could be integrated in with different cyber riders, et cetera. So, kind of understand what's in there and understand, what you get and what you don't get, because more organizations are facing some of these downtimes and outages.
I'll tell you, this is another say easy, do hard. Because, I did this with cyber liability insurance, and literally I sat down with the insurance agent and had him print out everything, the entire policy, all the riders, all the policy gap coverage, and I read it all and redlined it, all of it, because I needed to understand it, and then I had to have the conversations of, I don't know what this means. Can you please translate this for me? Because there's so much insurance jargon in there that you don't get it. But same thing with the business continuity disaster recovery riders. You got to read them. You have to read them and understand them to know what your coverage is, because in many instances, there's so many nuances, right? And do you want to
know how they changed, right? Know how they change over time, because they don't stay the same, for 2, 3, 5 years, right? I mean, if you look at the recent OFAC guidance, a lot of insurers are now, addressing that and how they potentially do or don't cover ransomware, right? If it may come out in the OFAC guidance.
Right. Yeah, and I just remember one line that I had to get redefined was if it was considered an act of war. It was something along those lines, right? Where if it was like a foreign entity trying to hack you, they wouldn't cover you because they considered it an act of war. Some weird language in there like that I had to get rewritten. But you got to read the fine print, right? Because you need to know what's covered and what's not exactly to the T.
Right. Because
I look at BCDR and does it cover a quote unquote act of God? What if you get a hurricane, right? Will it cover you? I don't know. You got to read it.
Right. Because looking at just the coverages and the coverage values isn't enough, because all the details is in all the clauses and riders behind it, because it's very easy. You got a general property policy, right? And they throw in a cyber insurance or a BCDR rider. And you just, on your policy, you just basically see the line, the coverage. Yep. It covers up to this. Same for the other one. But all the details are buried in this book behind it that no one ever looks at.
You have to read the whole thing. It's a must. It sucks,
details.
But you got to do it. Got to do it.
It's the hard stuff.
That's right.
The
boring pain in the ass stuff that nobody likes to do. That's what it is.
That's what hey, look, a squirrel.
That's what.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Right. Another squirrel. That's why you need a close relationship with general counsel so they can go decipher all that fine print.
That's right. 100%. Like I said, speed dial.
Exactly right. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.